Hey, welcome back to the CashPT Lunch Hour podcast. This is your host, Aaron LeBauer, and today my special guest is Luis Diaz. Luis is a fitness professional turned podcast expert, and Luis is the producer of our podcast, the CashPT Lunch Hour. I was introduced to Luis through a mutual friend, Vince Del Monte. Vince was also a guest on the show, and Vince and I have the same business coach in Bedros, and Vince posted about Luis, and I was like, I need a podcast producer, and I started working with Luis. Been with him for about a year and a half. I figured it's finally time to bring the podcast guy on the podcast to share with you the secrets of creating a podcast, building your expertise, and getting 100,000 downloads in 100 days, something like that, right, Luis?
You know it. That's right.
Thank you so much for being here. It's a pleasure and honor to have you on the show. So,
Man, Aaron, thank you.
Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit about your journey? Like you started as a trainer or a fitness pro, and then started doing podcasts?
Yeah, it's kind of a weird transition, but I was a personal trainer, and in college and getting out of college, I realized there's a ceiling on that, right? You can only charge so many hours per day. There's only so many hours you can work in a day. And I was like, well, this really stinks if all I can make. I was doing like 13, 14 sessions a day, getting up at 5 a.m., leaving the gym around 8. And I was like, I'm going to get burned out real fast if this keeps on going. I was like 23 at the time. I loved it, but I realized there's a scalable way to get to my financial goals using health and fitness. And that brought me online for like a lot of people. I'm sure a lot of people who are, you have PT clinics and things like that. They're like, wow, like there's another avenue to this that you can use if you leverage online strategies. So I got online, started watching, like anyone, started researching, watching videos on YouTube, and I came across other fitness professionals who wanted to do the same thing or were doing it at a much larger scale. Mm-hmm. One of those was our mutual friend Vince. And I spent probably 2 years trying to figure it out on my own and trying to think, I don't need a coach. I can just learn through all the free stuff, until finally I realized that like, I'm not going anywhere with the online business. And it's at the time I was still training as a trainer in LA Fitness. I finally decided to invest about $2,000 into one of Vince's masterminds. Mm-hmm. And that kind of brought me into the online world, understanding email marketing, understanding Facebook, understanding a lot of different social media strategies, how to create an info product, and then understanding the value of a mastermind and a coach. So after doing that, after that, I basically invested to spend more time with Vince as like a coaching client.
Yeah.
And from there, I got introduced to podcasts and just started learning more about podcasts. And the funny thing was, the first guy I worked with was actually one of Vince's good friends, and he didn't even know I was kind of working for free just to basically get my name on the radar. And my ideal goal was like, okay, if I work for this guy for free, eventually he'll hopefully promote my ebook, my little $47 ebook to his list as a thank you. And what I was doing for one of Vince's friends was basically producing his podcast. Because one of the things that I've done that I learned between working with Vince and kind of studying my own studious online was that in order to get people to pay attention to you, you have to create content. Right. And you have to be valuable and useful for them. And my idea was like, well, I suck at writing, I suck at video, but I can talk.
Yeah.
So I think I bought a $12 course, and I learned taught myself how to podcast. And that was kind of like my own little content marketing strategy. And that was back in 2016. January 2016, I started looking at how to launch it in March, failed, launched it again, got a little bit better at it. And eventually, Aaron, I actually was able to get clients from my podcast. Wow. And this is like just me organically just putting out content, putting in calls to action, and then having people email me who are listening to the show who wanted to be clients of mine. At the time, I was still doing health fitness coaching. And I was building a little tribe of online coaching clients through my podcast. And I think this is kind of relatable to what we're going to talk about today with your audience, and how can you use podcasts to create inbound traffic to your clinic? Maybe if you're doing some online stuff, how do you start to generate interest in your offers?
Right.
But
Right.
yeah, that was
That
kind of my introduction to
that's
everything.
awesome. So you kind of you went you went from being a trainer. It was like, okay, I need to stop training. Time for money. Let me check out this online thing. You got
Yeah.
your info product, and you're just doing someone else a solid by producing their own podcast, and then trying to start and you started yours to bring in some traffic, and then one day you realized
Yeah.
that producing other people's podcasts was a better route for you than training. What happened? Like,
So
what was the thing
it
that
was
changed for you?
it was a really funny conversation. He's like, Lewis. So Vince pulled me aside one day at a mastermind. He's like, Lewis, you can either sell $47 ebooks or you can charge $500 to $1,000 for podcasting clients.
Yeah.
And you can help 10 amazing people or however you want to serve. And you can make 10, 20, 30, $40,000 a month doing podcasting, or you can try and sell, X amount of, ebooks at
Yeah.
$47 in a saturated market where you're not the leader and you have no positioning. And it came very clear to me when
Yeah.
I said that. So, it was, yeah. And it's funny because and this is for someone else, for people listening, it's like, you probably have something you're really good at that you probably discount right now.
Mm-hmm.
At the time for me, it was like, oh, you have a podcast. That's cool. I want to learn how to do that. Because everyone else I talked to who didn't have one thought it was like a daunting process. And I can understand why they think that. So that was my strength. So I just kind of listened and finally had a mentor nice enough to say, like, you're not good at this, go do this.
Yeah. That's awesome.
So
Like, that's huge. Like, just by having him, kind of point you in a little bit different direction, it
yeah.
seems like it's made a huge, huge impact in your business trajectory. Right.
Oh yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's just kind of, you need those outside eyes. You
Yeah.
definitely need a coach and a mentor. Every podcast I go to, they ask me like, what's the number one piece of advice? And that's the fact of the matter is you need a coach and a mentor who has eyes outside of yours to look into what you're doing.
Yeah, that's really awesome. And so I think Vince, like I'd been following Vince and chatting with him a little bit here and there on Instagram, and I saw him post like, "Hey, anyone need a podcast? Producer?" And I was like, at the time, I was like, "Yeah, I do." And so then I got in
Yeah.
touch with you, and we got it set up. But you're also producing podcasts, not just for people like me, but who Vince and Steve Weatherford, who's the football small arms to big arms guy. He was a punter with huge arms and a couple other
Yeah.
people. So how did you get how was it that you ended up working with some of these big name people? Was it something you were doing to grow your business or
Right.
relationships or something else?
Oh man, so it was definitely relationships, but one of the things I did when I made the commitment to going down this route was I DM'd about 100 people every day
Mm-hmm.
for a month, and I started to get traction. Got like 99% no's, but I got a lot of traction just asking people if they wanted to start a podcast. And I specifically targeted people who had the influence, and they looked like they were selling something online already. So they had inbound traffic. So I aim to work with people who this would make sense for.
Yeah.
So through that, it's funny. Like I got connected with some of like the biggest bodybuilding.com, kind of like their athletes, and was fortunate enough to make a connection through one of them to some clients I have now, like Celeste Bonin, she's a WWE Diva champ.
Yeah.
Um, but a lot of that was also through when people came on Vince's show or a couple of my other clients' shows. I made a personal email. I sent them a personal email thanking them and then asking them, "Hey, you look like you have a great business. Have you ever thought about starting a podcast?"
Yeah.
So I kind of initiated the ball for those first year to really, and just really aggressive. Like I was not afraid of no.
Yeah. That's awesome.
And
I
yeah,
mean, I want to point that out that even though you're promoting a podcast, I'm a lot of times promoting a clinic or an online business. It's like this promotion's the same in that we have to um, lead with a lot of times a question and not be afraid of being told no, because you didn't just approach people and say, "Hey, can I create a podcast for you?" Or "I want you to work with me so I can build a." You were like, "Have you ever thought about starting a podcast?" Like, I don't want to flip over that question that you just said. I mean, that's
yeah,
huge in the way that you've approached people.
yeah.
Right?
And that was something that earlier on, because if like you were saying before, the question, the way it's angled is very important because they have thought about it. So you're probably going to get a yes out of most online
Mm-hmm.
people who are selling stuff online, online entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
So
How about people that own businesses that aren't online? Are they
yeah,
starting podcasts?
they are, yeah. However, for them, the strategy is a little bit different. I
Uh-huh.
mean, if you're a PT clinic and you want to start one, then the goal is how do you create. I think Aaron, you had a guy on here maybe a year ago now that had he had a great business, but he did a lot of community stuff.
Right.
And he really collaborated with a lot of other businesses to get his name everywhere. I can't for life. They were something to do with bikers. Like it was like a PT
Oh,
clinic
Pedal
for
PT.
bikers.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, those guys are great. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
And
they do like community events, I think weekly, coffees and everything like that.
yeah. So the strategy for like an offline business is how do we create a lot of reciprocity with a lot of other businesses in my neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
So in like Greensboro, North Carolina, it's like where are people who are probably my customers also frequenting? How
Mm-hmm.
can I speak to that business owner and get him on my podcast and collaborate so that he shares it with his audience
Right.
email list?
Right.
That's the name of the game.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's
So
awesome, and that's on my short list of things to work on in 2020 is a local podcast for our clinic. But I mean, I've helped a couple of my mastermind students start podcasts, and I think it's important to understand. And we were talking about earlier that a big reason, like a big reason podcasts are so effective is because it's leverage to create reciprocity,
mhm.
right? And because we're
Yeah.
positioning other people as experts to our audience, right? They feel like won't they feel like, well, I got to do something for you? I mean, is that what you find?
Oh, totally. Yeah. And also just making sure you kind of set the parameters before you interview them. Like
Mm-hmm.
this show is about, for if you're doing a local podcast, this show is about helping other people in the community get connected with local businesses,
Right.
so that they feel like it's not just you're not going to ask for something at the end. You're really just making great content for that person or for that community,
Mm-hmm.
so that they feel like exactly feel like, hey, like you took the time out of your day to interview me. The thing I want to do the most is just share that awesome conversation we had
Yeah. Yeah.
with people.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And then tell me more, like, why does a podcast help create expertise and authority for the host if they're doing is interviewing other people?
So a lot of times it's guilt by association.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're seen rubbing elbows with the top experts or the top people, like I look at a guy like Omar Escateller. I can't remember pronounce his name, but he's basically his podcast is what is it called? The Passionate Few.
Mm-hmm.
So if you look at the Passionate Few, this guy, from all accounts, he did not look like he wasn't famous before this, but he's gone and interviewed guys like Grant Cardone. He's interviewed some of my former clients like Dan Locke and Sharon Travaza, and now he's seen as an expert because he's now interviewed all of these amazing famous people like that no one can get to, and now he's seen as an expert.
Right.
So you're gonna, just by association, I don't even know what it is. I think it's a cognitive bias, but I could be wrong here. But basically, you're going to be seen as another person like
Yeah.
that of similar status. So
Yeah,
it's
that's awesome. I mean, it's one of those things where I think as physical therapists, a lot of times we're struggling with, like, the competition isn't really other PTs or chiropractors, it's patients, and like not seeing us as the expert in their problem.
mhm,
It's like people think that we're just like post-surgical rehab technicians, when
right.
what we really do is we help people recover from injuries and stay fit, healthy, and even get stronger without, like dangerous medications and surgeries. Excuse me. And it's like, how do I get people to understand that I'm an expert in what I do? And I think podcast is one of the most amazing ways to do it. There are a lot of other ways, like blogs and what else, books and things like that. So, Lewis, because a lot of people, like you already said this, a lot of people are intimidated or afraid. They've already thought about starting a podcast, but they've probably said, "Oh, it's way too much work."
Right. Or too much time. And
Too much
I've got
time.
clients to see and,
Yeah.
a clinic to run. So it's like, there's no way
Right.
I'm going to have time to go and start a new podcast.
Right. So
Totally,
how
totally
much
get that.
work and time does it actually take to start a podcast?
Right. So first, I want to position this for someone they have a local clinic and they want to position themselves as authority, because there's probably three or four other clinics in that area
Mm-hmm.
that are similar and maybe in what they offer. So I would say it probably takes, if you want to do it very lean and simple, it takes no more than about a month to start. And say if you took a month to get started, you could buy a course now. And I don't care whose course, because most people's courses are pretty much the same. They're going to teach you relatively the same basic stuff. Anywhere from 2 hours, maybe 2 hours a week, to okay, I got to, just breaking it down in small parts. Like, okay, I got to buy the mic. I've got to set up the hosting. I've got to record an intro and an outro. I've got to record my first 5 episodes, which we can definitely touch on that, what those episodes should
Mm-hmm.
be. And really there's not much to it when a lot of the stuff can be outsourced or B, done on your own with very little time. Like, Aaron, there's a number of times I've asked you to do an intro to script, and we'll write the script and you'll have it done in a day or two.
Yeah.
It's just very simple. So it's not hard. I think it's more about, it's a big task that needs to be broken down into micro sprints.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So,
And there's things like, I mean, is something like Anchor FM something that you like recommend, or is that just easy but heads you down the wrong direction if you eventually want to make it a big podcast?
exactly. It'll head you down the wrong. It's good to start, but it's not good to scale.
Yeah.
So one of the technical things is that they own like your RSS feed, which is, that's kind of like the lifeline of your podcast. So you don't want to have someone owning that.
Mm-hmm.
So I would choose something like a Libsyn or a Captivate.fm. Their pricing is really cheap and it's simple. So you can get started today and get going.
Yeah.
So, or Simplecast, one of those three I would say are definitely easy ones to get started on. And that'll give you a lot more flexibility. You can scale and grow that podcast much bigger.
Right.
One of the things I'd say as a PT, what you can do or look into is think about creating a DIY network.
Uh-huh.
So having multiple podcasts for different things, maybe back pain, maybe you could do something for athletes, PT for athletes, or PT for people who sit a lot, so like, corporate. Right. And you can make it kind of all co-branded around under the LeBauer clinic.
Right.
But
you mean like a 10 series podcast on fixing your back?
You could do
not
that.
An ongoing one, but you need something like that.
Right. You could so you could have set up different podcasts, and do 10 episodes on how to fix your back pain if you sit a lot or if you're a truck driver.
Right.
And then another one, and just have it out there, and it just sits there and feeds you clients.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's always out there. You can do some updated episodes every now and then. But setting the tech up is not hard at all.
Yeah, that's awesome. What's the biggest thing? What's the number one thing that you hear from people that keeps them from getting started? Is it just the fear that it's going to take too much time, or is there something? Is it tech? Is it something else?
It's a host of things. I think a couple of things you noted there are important to list off. Number one, I think the biggest thing people struggle with is that they're afraid it's not going to work.
Mm-hmm.
If it's kind of like investing in a coach or investing in some kind of business, like you're not 100% sure this is going to work. Therefore, the time and energy you expend in that is going to be, you're going to be afraid. You maybe pull back and not give it all of your energy and attention because you're not sure it's going to pan out.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the day, that's the biggest one. Second one is tech and simple things like, what mic do I choose? I see people spending hours on that when that's a 5-minute decision. The one I'm using right now is the exact one you need. It's called an ATR 2100.
Yeah.
It's like $80 and it'll get the job done for years. And so tech, lack of trust, and then time. Yeah. For some people, they want to do it like they think it's going to take way too much time, and maybe they don't have that.
People probably already have a bunch of episodes recorded. Wouldn't you say? I mean, if they've done anything like Facebook Lives or videos on YouTube, they probably have a bunch of content already. Don't you think?
Yeah. This is funny. This is how we launched one of our client shows. So we had a bunch of Facebook Live videos that were amazing. So we took those. We're like, he's already a busy guy. Let's just take those and let's repurpose those in the podcast. So all he had to do was sit there and record little introductions that were
Yeah.
like 30 seconds to a minute and just introducing what he's talking about. And then he was done.
Yeah.
So that resulted in like a 30,000 download month,
Wow.
that initial launch. So you can totally, most people who are doing Facebook Lives about problems that their audience has can repurpose that content and put it on a podcast. You probably already have 10 to 15 episodes right there.
Right.
So
That's awesome. What
it's simple.
why should someone start a podcast? If someone's like, dude, I've never thought about starting a podcast, or I'm thinking about it. Like, what are the benefits? Like, podcasting's on the rise. Like, what are the benefits of starting a podcast for people, whether it's online businesses and in-person businesses and
Right.
people, personal brands, et cetera? Why should someone start?
That's a great question. I think for just raw benefits, number one, if in these days of you want to obviously be positioned and connected with a lot of people in your industry. I can't tell you how many things I've like that have happened to me because I've know so many people, or I've interviewed this person and then he introduced me to so and so. So number one, from a connection standpoint, obviously you're gonna build your network, and that person could be your top affiliate, it could be another client, or I can't tell you how many times I've had people refer me clients
Mm-hmm.
because they're not in the business, but they know someone who needs my help, and I interviewed them. So that's number one. Number two, backlinks. A lot of people
Mm-hmm.
don't realize this or maybe not know this, but SEO is still important. And one of the easiest ways to create great blog posts and all backlinks for your website is to just podcast, do show notes, maybe write a small blog along with it, and then you have backlinks and also internal links in that inside of that show note page. So that's something that's really easy to do, and it just grows your domain authority.
Right.
Uh, and then I'd say last one for me is that you actually get smarter and you know your stuff better when you have to talk about it and teach it.
Absolutely.
So so I think you're able to actually be a better presenter if you ever want to be a speaker or anything along the lines of better communicating. You're gonna get better at that. You're also gonna get better at your craft.
Mm-hmm.
And also a side benefit for me is that I wrote my last book, how to get your first 100,000 downloads in 100 days using parts of my podcast.
Wow.
So it helped me create my book. And nowadays we're looking at some ways how you can create like an episode like this, how we can take that and turn that into an infographic or a lead magnet.
Right.
Because
Right.
everything we're talking about here can be an opt-in for someone's business.
Yeah. And I've done it. I've done this where we've turned it into a paid product and made thousands of dollars from an hour interview, basically. So that's something that my buddy Urson Religioso and I did. We created a masterclass and we turned it into a product. And
Right.
yeah, I mean, these things can be repurpose. It's the repurpose funnel. It's like, don't use all parts of the pig, as they say here in North Carolina, or take your content and use it multiple times in multiple places.
Yeah, 100%.
What do you mentioned before that the first 5 episodes are kind of important.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about like what should be in those, and should we release them all at once, or what is there a recommended release schedule type of thing?
Yeah. Nowadays, the first 5 episodes are your first chances that someone's going to hear you. So it's really important that you take time, make those episodes obviously great, but also focus on them. So I would say the first 5 episodes are all about what are the core pillars of your brand and how do those help your customer get to where they want to go.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're a PT, then you need to be talking about what is that you do differently and how does that tie into what that customer is looking to get.
Right.
If I'm looking to relieve my back pain, how is my process, my 4-step process, able to help you get there faster, easier, and cheaper?
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things I would say, if someone's launching a podcast and they want to really make really great episodes that are focused around those around their customer, look at your pillars. So if you look at kind of what you stand for as a coach, Aaron, like what are some of the pillar things that you believe would help people get from struggling in their practice to really, really succeeding and having a scalable business that runs itself?
Yeah. It's the main things are was it like understanding your why and passion, like, because it's going to be tough, so you got to do that. You got to know who our target is, right? So
Okay.
we know who we're marketing to, and we've got to have a 10-step strategy to take action and launch product. I mean, that would be those are the main three things. We got to know who we're focused on. I got to know why I want to do it to help other
Yeah.
people. And I got to be able to, take action and know, like, what are those steps to taking action, because nothing's going to happen if we don't take action on it.
Right. So episode 1 would be kind of your story, how you got from here to
Yep.
there. And then the next 2, 3, and 4 would be those individual episodes on those key things.
Mm-hmm.
I'd probably put a name around that.
Yep.
And then create some kind of lead magnet or cheat sheet behind those episodes. And then the last one, if we're looking at, you got 1, 2, 3, 4. The last one could be something that's really common. So looking at like your top, what's the number one question that your audience is asking, that if you go to like Quora,
Right.
like everyone who has back pain is asking, or how do I fix back pain?
Yeah.
And then they could be
yeah. Everyone's asking, like, what, is my herniated disc going to go, basically, my herniated disc going to go away, or, how do I fix the herniated disc type of thing? It's like, there's a lot of misinformation. So that would be like a clinical one, right? Everyone else is asking me, Aaron, how do I get patients to pay in cash, or how do I scale a cash practice when everyone wants to use their insurance?
Right. Right. Exactly. So it's like you could do a multi-part series.
Yeah.
That 5th episode could just be a one-liner or one shot and done, or you could span that out into like a series of like, we're gonna do a 6-part series on how to, create just how I get more clients to pay with cash instead of paying with insurance.
Mm-hmm.
We're walking you through. So there's so many things you can do with it and get creative besides just normal interviews. If you look at like what Netflix is doing or what Disney Plus is doing, how are they releasing their content? How are they creating shows? Like those guys, the masters. So I don't really study a lot of other podcasters. Like when I look at content, I study Disney and I study CBS and NBC.
Yeah.
People who have the eyeballs.
So we should, like, let's say we're going to release one for my clinic, and we should basically do a why, like why we started, like a story about our business, a little bit about what the podcast is going to be about, and then answering like, episodes 2, 3, and 4 is kind of, the top 3 problems we help people achieve and some strategies for people to do, similar to the way we do blog posts and Facebook Lives on them. And then that last one is going to be, maybe that 5th one would be more of a, I don't know what, like an outline of what we do or how we help, or even just going through one of our ebooks and offering the ebook, something like that, right? I think I got it all right. And then we take all 5 of those episodes and just release them on the first day.
So you could, yeah. So that's the second part of your question. I never got to that. So thank you for reminding me.
Yeah.
So that part is, it's interesting because I used to do it like that. I used to release them all at once. And the issue with that, I find, is that yes, you get like, say, 5 to 8 episodes out. The problem is most people won't have time to listen to all 5 or 8.
Mm-hmm.
So they'll listen to the top 1 or 2, and then they'll bounce. Which means some episodes may not get listened to as much as they should have, or it just may be content you may have not positioned as good as you could have. So what I like to do now is launch with anywhere from like 3 to 5 on the initial episode.
Yeah.
And then I'll wait like 3 days, 3 or 4 days, and I'll promote each episode to my email list individually. So we'll launch all 5, but then we'll separate, like each day we will actually promote them differently. Yeah. Like we'll promote episode 1 on the first day, 2, 3, 4, 5, to your email list and to your following. And then we'll either go on a normal schedule of like once a week or twice a week after that, or we will I've had people where they just release seasons. Mm-hmm. So they'll do 5 to 8 and then they'll stop, and then they'll do 5 to 8 the next month and stop. Yeah. So I think it also depends on your business model and what you're doing, what else you're doing, right? Right.
Like yeah, like for right now, we just do 1 a week. I've been doing 1 a week for a while, and sometimes like, oh, this is great, and then sometimes I'm like, oh man, we don't have any interviews scheduled. What are we going to do? And we go dig up some old content. We'll dig up some old content, or I'll create something new. And it's a decent amount of work because my episodes are an hour, but I could see, 15, 30-minute quick interviews over lunch, interview after a workout, something like that is, podcasts don't have to be an hour long. They can be 10, 15 minutes, right?
Oh, totally. Yeah. Some of mine are 10, 15 minutes, and those are the best ones. One of the things that I've done recently is started to do more audits. So
Mm-hmm.
I'll bring a client on my podcast, or I'll bring somebody else who's not a client is do an audit on their show. And this is something, it's almost like it's not like an interview. It's more of like you just giving, so you're just demonstrating your expertise. And instead of sometimes always going for the interview or going for the expert, I'll do that as a way to drive people who are, maybe they've been following you on Facebook or they've seen your stuff, but they're not really sure how you can help, or not really, they don't trust you as much.
Uh-huh.
It's a great way to build a relationship with someone who's a potential prospect. Just get them on the podcast, help them with their business, do like a business audit, like a PT business audit,
Yeah.
and give them some homework, and then have them report back to you, and then carry on the conversation. So that's another way to do interviews or stuff like that, to use your podcast as a lead gen tool,
Right.
as opposed to just free content all the time. That's
Yeah.
passive.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's awesome. So, what else? Like, let's say someone already has a podcast. They've
Yeah.
been doing it for a year or two, kind of like I had been before we started working together.
Right.
What are some of the things that you see with people who, may have already started, but things aren't, like going as well as they could, or maybe they think they're going
Right.
well, but like, what would be some things that they should look at or look out for to see if they need to change something or do something new or different?
Yeah, this is a great question, 'cause I get asked this all the time. So a couple things. Number one of the things I like to do is resurvey the audience. So
Mm-hmm.
I will because we tend to drift. We're sitting there, we're producing content, it's going out, we're getting some downloads, and it just seems like sometimes we forget that there's actually human beings on the other end of that.
Yeah.
And it's like we need to figure out what these people actually want. So we need to I need to get them on the phone. I need to get them. I need to get a survey out. I need to incentivize them to just tap me on the shoulder and say, "Hey, I want to learn about this, or I'm struggling with this." So the first thing I like to do with people like that is we need to kind of tap the lifeline and get people back into it and figuring out what they want to hear.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then that dives into what kind of content are we going to create? Is it going to be interview based? Is it going to be series? So that's really step number one. Number two, another way to kind of spark growth is through contests and giveaways.
Mm-hmm.
So we've all got something to give away, whether it's yours or maybe it's an affiliate's or maybe it's a partner's, or maybe you're just giving away your time at the beginning. But giving away things in exchange for subscribership, reviews, and shares and engagement, that's something that for us we've seen success with. Whether you're launching or whether you already have a show, and you can make whatever excuse you want, it's Christmas, so we're doing a giveaway, it's Hanukkah, it's whatever the case may be. So those are two ways right now in order to get some kind of traction or get to spark growth to
Mm-hmm.
the next level if you've been doing this for a while.
What's the like on average, like we know like people like Lewis House has like thousands or millions of downloads, right? And
Yeah,
what's his name? Joe Rogan is like got the biggest, most popular
stupid level.
podcast. I mean, I don't
Yeah.
how many downloads a month does Joe Rogan get?
Oh,
We're
I want to
talking,
say millions,
yeah,
millions. Because the thing is, he's doing it on YouTube too, and he's
right,
got a massive YouTube audience. That's another thing I think. If you're podcasting and you're not on YouTube, then you definitely want to get on there. Like that needs to be an initiative if you're already creating content,
yeah,
especially
and
video content.
yeah, and that's why I record these as videos, and we strip the audio and put it on the podcast and put the video on YouTube, and we put both the video and the podcast audio on the blog post. But let's say, hey, Aaron LeBauer doesn't get a million downloads, and there are not a
Right.
million people that live in Greensboro. What is a successful podcast?
That's up to the eye of the beholder, I've learned.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'll say a number, and I know I could say 10,000, but I know people are getting 30,000. So if they drop down to 10, they'd be like, whoa. There's guys who are getting hundreds, maybe just a couple hundred. So it really depends on what your goals are. Like if your goal as a clinic is to get one customer a month or 10 leads a month from your podcast, you really don't need a lot of downloads for that. You
Right.
need maybe a couple hundred. So the beauty, it's in the eye of the beholder. For a guy or gal who's doing this for business purposes, like they have a business behind this, maybe have a high-end mastermind or they have some kind of product they're selling. I wouldn't focus so much on the numbers. I'd focus on conversions.
Mm-hmm.
I'd focus on how many people, when I give this free gift away, how many people go and download it, or how many people are engaging with me on the podcast and saying like, hey, I really enjoyed the last episode. It gave me some clarity on X, Y, and Z. So there are other measures, like downloads aren't always the best because downloads don't turn into dollars,
Right.
unfortunately. It depends. So I like to look at like, how are we converting those people from listeners into leads and opt-ins and people who are actually engaging with my stuff.
Yeah.
Um,
Awesome.
so I definitely like pick a number for people who are listening, like pick a number, 10, I want to get 10 leads from my podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And then go to work on just measuring that every month. Like how many leads did I collect and where did they go in my funnel?
Yeah. So is that like, I guess I got a couple more questions for you and we'll wrap
Shoot.
up. But I think like a lot of people talk about monetizing podcasts, and there's a lot of different ways to monetize a podcast, and some podcasts don't need to be monetized. Is there a specific, so there's like there's sponsors and there's some other things, but like, is there a specific type of or way to monetize a podcast or make it work for you? Is it just like the lead generation tool that we just spoke about, or is there something else? Like when we talk about podcast monetization, like ads or
Right. I think I did a training on this. It's a free training with my book, and we'll link it in the show notes. It's
Okay.
called the 7 Key Monetization Models of Podcasting. It's a like a private podcast that I did a little while ago, but I can't remember all 7. Basically, there's a couple. There's your own products,
Mm-hmm.
which are the most profitable and the best ones if you can do it. This is why all the big people have courses or they have other things they're selling behind it, because like it's 100% ownership by you. There's no saying what you can and can't do. It's 100% your profit. So your product's number one, always going to be, from my eyes, the best way. Behind that, there obviously is sponsorships via, like for you as a PT, talking about like how to PTs, there's a lot of software or companies that would love to talk to your audience.
Right.
I think we spoke about someone before who has like a couple sponsors that would be perfect for you as well. So that for you and any other PTs listening, this would be another way, looking at what softwares are you using on a daily basis. Could you reach out to them and potentially say, hey, I have a podcast that gets
Mm-hmm.
500 people a month. Here are my listeners. Would you like to be the first sponsor at an introductory price?
Right.
So you can instantly, if you go out and create those relationships with sponsors, they'll be receptive. But that's the second way. The third way, which is not a very common way, and very few people do it, which is charging guests to be on their podcast, which is only if you have a very large amount of traffic. So that's the third way. And then the fourth way is through affiliate deals. So JV and affiliate stuff. So I've had clients in the past where they've told me like, look, I don't care how many downloads the podcast gets. I'm here to bring affiliates on, create relationships so that they promote my products
Right.
to their list. And if you have an affiliate marketing model where you're selling something and you want someone else to promote it, what better way to break bread and to connect with someone who's not currently promoting your stuff than to get them on a conversation and talk to them, or on a podcast and talk to them. So those are the
awesome.
4 ways. Yeah. 4 biggest ways that I see people monetizing podcasts.
Mm-hmm.
A good show to check out for this is Evergreen Profits. I think they sell like a monthly membership.
Okay.
Where you get like these like super cool show notes, like kind of like a Cliff Notes version of your podcast episodes. They sell for like $17.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and they have like hundreds of thousands of people on this thing, so it's a good monthly retainer or monthly revenue model. So
that's awesome. Louis, what question did I not ask you about podcasts or about business growth that you think would be helpful for people listening?
I would say that's a really good one. We covered a lot of good ground here to help people get started. I would say when it comes to PTs, I want to focus on PTs and be super valuable to your audience, Aaron, because I know some people listening to this right now that probably have a clinic and they're busy as heck. The thing is, one of the questions I would say is, how do I benefit from podcasts without having to start my own?
Right.
Or going through all the work of starting my own and maintaining it. And that is, I would say, through getting on other podcasts and really becoming a resource and a really featured guest that people love to interview, so that you can benefit from their traffic, drive traffic to your stuff. At the same time, you don't have to worry about editing or production. So being a guest is the number one way I would say, or number one question I would say that's
Yeah.
most people are asking me nowadays.
That's
We
awesome.
didn't cover.
So how do people do that? Do they just go and like say, "Hey, I want to be a guest on your podcast," and like a lot of these messages I get is like, "Hey, so and so would be a great guest on your podcast." I'm like, but they have nothing to do with health, business, or like.
Yeah. Yeah. It's I find it's a lot like talking to a girl at the bar. You
Yeah.
don't ask her to marry her. You don't ask her to go out on a date. You probably want to ask her to buy a drink.
Mm-hmm.
And you want to give before actually even asking. So a lot of times when I'll get invited on podcasts, I'll meet someone at an event, or I will help someone in a Facebook group,
Mm-hmm.
or I'll just send them a free gift and like, hey, like I saw you had a question here. I thought this would help you a lot. And a lot of times I'll get asked like, oh wow, you really know your stuff. Like, would you be a guest on my podcast? And I'm like, yeah, sure, happy to. So a lot of times I don't even ask for it. And I wouldn't recommend asking for it unless you have a really good pitch and you're actually relevant. So it starts with helping and finding out like who has podcasts that your audience listens to,
Right.
and then how do you position yourself as an expert and as someone who's helpful to those podcast hosts without being sleazy, spammy, or looking like you're begging for
Yeah.
for traction, for help. So
Yeah, that's great. And that goes back to where we started in the beginning. It's like asking the right questions. Like I got to know if the person at the bar wants a drink. Like, are they thirsty? Are
Right.
they interested in chatting? Someone else, like, are they interested in guests rather than just like, hey, I'm a great guest, or buy my physical therapy. It's like, I got to know if you need it. Right.
Right. So being observative, that's a great point there too.
Yeah.
We've got something coming out soon to help people with that. And yeah, I'll share more details about that when it comes out with you
Awesome.
to share with everyone here.
Cool. Well, you mentioned you had like a free resource, and I know you got a book. Like, is there a way that people listening can get a hold of that?
Totally. So we will link it in the show notes, Aaron. So make sure you go to Aaron's website. Is it LeBauerConsulting.com?
Yeah, LeBauerConsulting.com/podcast.
Cool. Go there, and there will be a link to my free book, How to Get Your First 100,000 Downloads in 100 Days. It'll be a free PDF download. All you have to do is send your email and name, and you'll get the book. And that will pretty much lay out some of the things that I've seen help people grow really, really fast. So yeah, it's
Awesome.
probably the best place to start if you're
Awesome.
looking at launching or growing a podcast.
Awesome. Thank you very much. And then if someone wants to get in touch with you online somewhere, where do they find you? Like Instagram, Facebook, website, etc.
Probably Facebook. There's like a million Luis Diaz. That's a problem with my name.
Yeah.
There's not a shortage of Luis Diaz's. I guess the best place would be, if you're an Instagram fan, go to Luis or at Luis Ryan Diaz, Luis Ryan Diaz. So LUIS Ryan Diaz. And then Facebook, I have a brown jacket on. I'm holding a coffee. I've been Luis Diaz.
There's probably five of you doing that too.
There's probably 5 or 6 of those. So yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome.
The better looking one, I hope.
Or you just come to the blog website and we'll have the right links.
Exactly. Yeah. LeBauer Consulting will have all the good details for you.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I have the fortune and misfortune of sometimes being 6'3" with red hair, which didn't help in middle school. Now it helps though. Luis, thank you so much for being on the show today. I really appreciate it. And I appreciate all the work you've done for me and helping me produce this podcast, because without what you guys have been doing, it wouldn't have grown the way it's grown in the last year and a half. So thank you. I appreciate that.
It's really appreciated.
And I'll also give a shout out to Luis. If anyone's looking for someone to produce their podcast and take that time suck off your hands, everything that we've done with Luis has been amazing and great and easy. He just sends me scripts. I read them out. Boom. So get in touch with him if that's you. There may only be a few people on here listening, but I want to give him a shout out. He's been really awesome in helping us grow the podcast and save a ton of time and promote some other events and great ideas for marketing. So thank you, Luis. I want to just say that to you
it's
on
a pleasure.
air. And this is the CashPT Lunch Hour. So if you've gotten anything out of this episode or any other episode, we'd really appreciate you leave a 5-star rating and review on iTunes. And if you have any questions, throw them to me through Instagram. Screenshot this on Instagram stories, share it with your friends, tell someone, or just go take action on the one idea that you learned here today and make it happen. And we'll see you on the next show. Thanks so much.